Women's rights have been infringed upon throughout human history and continues on even to this day. Though slowly social progress was made, and the truth of equality to, with, and for all became more evident to an increasing number of individuals and cultures. The United States has been part of that culture change in many ways. The country was founded on liberty and justice for all, and is making strides towards expressing that in its laws and practices. The U.S. has been an ideal place for social movements for two reasons specifically. First, the country's initial independence from the British Empire began as a social/political movement, and the rebelliousness of that act of secession has set a sort of claim in our American ideals. Secondly, written in the American Constitution is the First Amendment, giving all Americans a right to free speech. This opens the door for conversation and allows for any movement to gain traction if there are others willing to support it. There are a few complications in rallying support for women's rights, however. The most common misconception is that it only affects half of the population, which is neither true directly or indirectly. Another misconception is that women are already treated equally in every way, and that there is no more progress being made because there is no more progress left to make. The most glaring exception to this way of thinking is that there is a tangible proof that shows how much space there is for improving on our treatment of disenfranchised social classes, with that evidence coming down to dollars and cents within salary. According to the Striver report released in 2014, the average annual paycheck for women reflects only 70 cents for every $1 earned by men. African American women earn only 64 cents and Latinas 55 cents. The equal pay movement was a gradual realization by many women that they were doing similar, if not identical, work to men and getting paid noticeably less than their male counterparts. Some of the movement's leaders included Emma Patterson, Mary McLeod Bethune, and President John F. Kennedy, with efforts beginning as early as the American Industrial Revolution.
In the 19th century, there were women who believed there needed to be women-only organizations in order to improve their wages and working conditions. An important leader that helped women strive towards equal pay and equality is Emma Patterson. Emma Patterson became well known for her outstanding flair for publicity, public relations, and qualities of leadership. Emma started off as a bookbinder in London, but London at the time consolidated women in trade unions. She argued that classifying women with children was degrading and implied that they were helpless. In 1879, Emma started a movement for all female trade unions. She drafted women who worked as bookbinders, upholsterers, shirt and collar makers, dressmakers, and milliners. But it was tough for Emma to gain credible workers for trade unions because of the male-dominant patriarchal ideology, and many of them didn't have the right skill set, because at the time, many women worked in small sweatshops or at home. Emma then established the Women's Protection and Providence League. According to the book Women's Work by Elizabeth Roberts, the movement worked towards the increase of women's awareness of the importance of trade unions, stimulated government legislation in the pre-First World War period, declared policies of the TUC which supported equal pay resolutions, increased recognition of women's skill, and to end sexual harassment and to improve working conditions. Before Emma's passing, the total number of females she got to join the movement came to be approximately 2,500 members. After her death, her legacy for the fight for equal pay and rights continued. Her position was passed on to Amelia Dyke, who continued where Emma left off.
The movement continues until today. Women are at a disadvantage socioeconomically and are still reaching great heights, but still have not received one of the most basic things our centuries-old, technologically advanced, generally financially stable, economically developed, and at times progressive American society has to offer. One simple principle that has yet to be upheld: equal pay for equal work.
The movement to eliminate pay gaps based on gender is a relatively new one, though it extends back significantly farther if one considers the women's rights movement as a whole. However, in the interest of time, our focus here will be the equal pay rights. Accordingly, the main goal of this movement was to achieve a 100-100 pay ratio for women versus men, rather than the 77 to 100 ratio that persists to this day. While this ratio has certainly been on the rise, it has not yet reached its endpoint. Long-standing efforts by many individuals, like Esther Peterson, a labor activist who urged President Kennedy to establish the Presidential Commission on the Status of Women, have helped carry the movement towards this endpoint. Moreover, Peterson also did much of the work to bring the Equal Pay Act before Congress and submitted a draft of it to them on behalf of Kennedy.
Even though it's been over half a century since the Equal Pay Act was enacted, small progress has been made since. Gender pay inequity is a pressing civil rights issue for our time. Pay equity is more than having a comparable paycheck for the same work. It is about recognizing that we all deserve basic dignity, respect, equal opportunity, and access to economic security. Women are graduating college in greater numbers than men and are earning the majority of advanced degrees, but still are not getting paid equally. Research have found that young women fresh out of college experience a 7% wage gap compared to their male peers at their first job. This gap continues to follow them no matter what education level they seek. According to the economist Stephanie Seguino, a woman has to work 52 years to earn what a man makes in 40 years. At every educational level, women continue to earn less than men with the same credentials. Sociologist Shelley Correll at Stanford University points out that mothers earn 5% less per hour per child than childless women. Since workers are discouraged to talk about pay with other workers, it makes it difficult for women to address this discrimination. In the 50 years since the passage of the Equal Pay Act, the gender wage gap has been narrowed only by 18 cents, and that is mostly because men's wages are decreasing rather than the women's increasing.
The movement has won small victories as well as large ones, such as a 97 to 100 pay ratio for women in the state government of Minnesota, or even the 100 to 8 to 100 average pay ratio that was measured for childless women between the ages of 22 and 30 in 2008 by the U.S. Census Bureau. These are driven not only by political action, but by the growing numbers of women who attend higher education institutions. The largest difference was in Atlanta, Georgia, where the ratio was 121 to 100 as a significant growth. These small victories, and the innumerable people that, consciously or not, brought them to fruition, are not as well known as the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which, despite the fact that it encompassed significantly more than women alone, was a major step in the right direction. The Civil Rights Act was a broad expansion of the Equal Pay Act, making discrimination based on color, race, religion, gender, or national origin illegal, whereas the Equal Pay Act only acted upon gender in the area of pay. More recently, an organization called Equal Pay Today has emerged. They are a group that capitalizes on the power of the people to encourage politicians to help close the pay gap between men and women, targeting the base causes such as retaliation against workers who discuss their pay. The organization itself is a coalition of almost every national and state-based women's rights group from across the U.S. and is putting a considerable amount of pressure on governors, as well as Congress and House of Representative members, to address these underlying issues. They are also attempting to raise awareness of this national pay gap and encourage citizens to vote on it, furthering their influence even more. While this movement has certainly been around for a very long time, it may seem that it has made little progress. However, this is not due to lack of effort or supporters. Rather, it is because of opposition and lack of resources. Overall, there was, and still is, long-standing opposition of women's attempt to go outside traditional roles, housekeeping, parenting, etc. Thankfully, that has seen a decline in recent years. Sadly, this decline is nowhere near a complete elimination, as deep-rooted traditions tend to take generations to dissipate completely. It is good to see that progress is being made. A side effect of these old oppositions means that the equal pay movement has seen little funding because of its lack of major corporate supporters. This is something of a stumbling block for the movement because many of America's political functions are monetarily driven. On the other side of the coin, however, the supporters of the movement seem to be making up for it with their zeal and conviction.
On Iowa State University's campus, there are many efforts being made on pay equity and women's rights in general. To learn more about this topic, we interviewed Lorraine Acker, director of the Margaret Sloss Women's Center, about equal pay movement and its impact on Iowa State University.
Our services is located between Gerdine and Curtis Hall, which is, close to the Campanile.
The fight for equal pay has been seen on many college campuses around the nation. April 14th is Equal Pay Day, the national holiday to educate the public on how there is still work to be done on terms of equal pay. On this day, organizations on campuses around the nation and the world spread awareness, protest, and call others to action. In an effort to educate students and faculty, many colleges invited Lily Ledbetter, an equal pay for equal work activist, to speak on the disparities between men and women when it comes to pay. Speaking on her experience presenting on campuses around the U.S., Ledbetter says, "When they hear me talk, they're just all flabbergasted. They cannot believe how far behind we are." This outcry is seen on college campuses internationally as well. At the University of Birmingham, students delivered a fake check worth £410,000 to the Vice President's office to show the disparities in pay between men and women faculty on their campuses. Iowa State celebrates Equal Pay Day as well. The Cat Women's Center, Margaret Sloss Women's Center, and a plethora of women's organizations get together to educate people on the issue. On this day, they also hold workshops for people to learn more about pay disparities, and the disadvantages women face in the workplace. While there are no organizations on campus at Iowa State that are direct results of the movement, there are plenty of organizations that target the inequalities between men and women on campus and provide services for women on campus as well. There is the University Consortium for Women, an academic student service geared towards undergraduate women. There is also the Women of Color Network that focuses on making sure women at Iowa State complete their degree and even move on to higher education. It is important to note that these organizations are open to all Iowa State students of every gender identity and do not exclude based on sex or gender identification. The legacy of the equal pay movement on Iowa State University was tremendous. This movement made students and faculty at Iowa State more concerned about women making less than men on campus. The equal pay movement also sparked a discussion on other challenges that women are facing on campus and throughout the nation.
Folks at Iowa State are very concerned about not just women making more than men, but more so creating a welcoming environment for women. So looking at women's issues from a broad perspective in terms of leave, medical leave. I think this past year there were conversations around, for example, if you are a graduate student or if you are a postdoc and you happen to get pregnant or are you with child during your academic career, are you still going to be able to kind of finish? So there were some conversations around making sure that that process is fair for grad students who and postdocs who may have become pregnant or starting a family during that time, and that's now policy which a lot of departments all departments have to follow. It's also written into the tenure process.
While Iowa State University has made strides in terms of celebrating and supporting equality of men and women, there is still improvement to be made. When asked what more Iowa State could do to better support women's rights, Ms. Acker says,
making it explicit, if issues of discrimination or sexual harassment or things that are improper that are happening in whether it's the res hall, whether it's an academic department, making it explicit so students know coming in we have a zero tolerance policy.
Fortunately, there are things that we can do too. First, get involved. There are many organizations on campus that can help you make a difference. Secondly, educate yourself on the issue. And third, be politically active. Research candidates and be aware of those whose policies supports women's rights and those that don't. A single vote can go a long way.